September 17th, 1943. The moonless sky over the Belgian countryside, 10,000 feet above the Ardennes forest. The droning engines of the RAF Sterling bomber cut through the chill night air like a predator's growl, vibrating through the fuselage and into the bones of the men huddled inside. Sergeant Ellis "Hawk" Thompson gripped the edge of his jump seat, his gloved fingers numb, not just from the cold, but from the adrenaline surging like ice water in his veins. The cabin smelled of oil, sweat, and the faint metallic tang of fear. Fear that this drop might be their last if the Luftwaffe's night fighters caught their scent. 2 minutes to the DZ, the dispatcher shouted over the roar, his voice muffled by the scarf wrapped around his face. He was a wiry Scotsman named Mac, with eyes like polished flint, checking the harnesses one last time. Hawk nodded, adjusting the straps of the bulky radio set strapped to his chest. It was a Type 3 Mark II, fresh from the SOE's workshops in Baker Street. Compact, powerful, with a range that could punch signals across the Channel to London without a whisper of betrayal. But tonight, it wasn't just any radio. It was a lifeline for the resistance cells, starving for contact, a tool to coordinate sabotage against the Nazi supply lines snaking through Belgium like black veins. Hawk's mind raced back to the briefing room in England, the dim light flickering over maps pinned with red and blue pins. "The Abwehr's getting clever," the major had said, his pipe smoke curling like question marks. "They're sweeping the fields after every drop, collecting anything that falls short. Radios, weapons, even bloody chocolate bars. London keeps sending them, but Jerry's hoarding every piece like it's the Holy Grail." Hawk had volunteered without hesitation. At 28, with a wife waiting in Manchester and a son he'd only seen in photographs, this was his war, not on the beaches or in the hedgerows, but in the shadows where intelligence could turn the tide. The red light blinked on above the hatch. "Green in 30, Mac bellowed. The team, 4 SOE agents, including Hawk, stood, shuffling into position. You can feel it now, that pull in your gut, the way the world narrows to the square of black sky beyond the open door. Wind howls in, whipping at coats and scarves, carrying the scent of pine and damp earth from far below. Hawk was third in line, his parachute pack heavy on his back, the radio's antenna coil pressing against his ribs like a caged bird, desperate to fly. The first man jumped, a Belgian exile named Pierre, his face pale but set. He vanished into the void with a muffled whoop, swallowed by the night. Then the second, an American named Riley, cursing under his breath as he tumbled out. Hawk's turn. He edged to the lip, heart pounding like a Tommy gun. The dispatcher slapped his shoulder. "Godspeed, lad. Hit the silk and find your contact." Hawk leaped. The rush hit him like a fist. The freefall, wind tearing at his clothes, the earth rushing up in a blur of shadowed fields and hedgerows. Seconds stretched into eternity. You imagine it, your stomach lurching, the cold biting through wool and leather, the distant rumble of the Sterling fading as you plummet alone. Pull the ripcord. Jerk. The canopy blooms above, yanking you upright into a gentle sway. Below, the drop zone glows faintly under the navigator's flare, a quilt of pastures near the village of La Roche, pinpointed by the Resistance's signal fires, now doused to avoid prying eyes. He drifted, scanning for the markers, 3 flashes from a torch, the rendezvous point. The radio thumped against him with each swing. Land, soft thud into wet grass, rolling to absorb the impact. Hawk shrugged off the harness, burying the chute under a pile of leaves as quickly as his frozen fingers allowed. The others landed nearby, shadows converging in the gloom. "All here?" Pierre whispered, his accent thick with relief. "Aye," Riley grunted, spitting out dirt. "Now let's move before Fritz's patrols sniff us out." They split the load. Hawk took the radio, Pierre the explosives, Riley the medical kits and false papers. The fourth man, a quiet Norwegian called Lars, carried the cipher books, pages that could decrypt London's messages or doom them all if captured. Under the cover of night, they trekked toward the safe house. a farmhouse on the outskirts of La Roche. Its owner, a widow named Elise, who ran a cell of saboteurs with the ferocity of a cornered wolf. Dawn was still hours away when they reached the barn, slipping through the hayloft door like ghosts. Elise waited inside, lantern low, her face lined with the weariness of occupation, but eyes sharp as daggers. "You are late," she said in clipped English, handing out hot coffee from a thermos. "The Germans patrol closer each night. Last week they found a drop near Bastogne. Radios, 3 of them. Abwehr officers came themselves, not the locals. They collected every piece, like scavengers." Hawk set the radio down carefully on a workbench cluttered with tools and half-repaired bicycles, covers for the real work. "London knows. That's why we're here. This set's got a new frequency hopper, harder to triangulate. We'll get messages out, coordinate the next rail sabotage." Elise nodded, but doubt flickered in her gaze. "They listen. Always listening. My husband. He operated one like this, until they came." The group settled in, unpacking the kit. Hawk powered up the radio, the valves humming to life with a soft glow. Static crackled from the speaker as he tuned it, the aerial strung taut between barn beams. First transmission, a test burst, to confirm receipt. "This is Sparrowhawk. Package delivered. Awaiting orders." "D." But as the signal pulsed out into the ether, unseen miles away in a dimly lit villa on the edge of Brussels, Oberleutnant Karl Becker of the Abwehr leaned over his own receiver. The room reeked of cigarette smoke and stale coffee. Maps of the Ardennes spread across a table littered with intercepted transcripts. Becker was a tall man, mid-30s, with a scarred cheek from the Eastern Front and eyes that missed nothing. His team, cryptographers and radio experts, huddled around dials, headphones clamped on, plotting bearings from fixed stations. "Another one," murmured his assistant Fritz, a bespectacled corporal with ink-stained fingers. "Bearing 247 degrees from here, strength increasing. It's close." Becker's lips tightened. London had been dropping these infernal devices for months, arming the vermin in the fields. But his unit had a reputation. The collectors, they called them. Every radio, every crystal set, every antenna fragment. They gathered it all, piecing together the network like a puzzle. "Triangulate," he ordered, voice calm but edged with steel. "And alert the patrols. If it's down, we find it before they bury it." Back in the barn, Hawk waited for the acknowledgement beep from London. It came, sharp and clear. Success. But as he switched off, a distant dog barked, echoing through the valleys. Elise froze. "Patrol! Hide it!" They scrambled, wrapping the radio in oilcloth and stowing it under floorboards. Outside, the crunch of boots on gravel grew nearer. You feel the tension coiling, the air thick with unspoken dread. The war wasn't just bombs and battles, it was this. Whispers in the dark, a radio's hum that could light the path to freedom or lead straight to the Gestapo's door. As the patrol passed, oblivious for now, Hawk wondered how long London's drops could outpace the hunters. The Abwehr was closing in, one radio at a time. October 1943. The cramped attic above Elise's farmhouse, hidden behind false walls in the rafters of La Roche, where the scent of aged timber and drying herbs clung to the air like a shroud. Hawk crouched in the dim glow of a single oil lamp, its flame flickering shadows across the radio's dials. The set was a marvel of wartime ingenuity, tubes humming softly, the Morse key clicking under his fingers as he tapped out the first real message to London. The attic was a spider's web of wires and concealed panels, the perfect lair for a wireless operator evading the Abwehr's net. Downstairs, the others rested fitfully on straw pallets, but sleep eluded Hawk. His mind replayed the patrol's boots fading into the night, a reminder that safety was as fleeting as the dawn mist rolling through the Ardennes. You sense it here. In the quiet after the scare, the weight of isolation pressing down, the wooden beams creaking like whispers of betrayal. Elise had led him up earlier, her lantern casting long shadows as she pointed out the escape route, a narrow chute to the pigsty below, greased with lard for a swift slide if Gestapo boots stormed the door. "We have lost 3 operators this year," she murmured, her voice a gravelly thread in the dark. "Each time, the radios vanished with them. The collectors take everything." Hawk's transmission built rhythm, coordinates for a supply drop, details on a rail bridge near the Meuse that the resistance planned to blow. ... The key danced, short bursts to minimize detection, encoded in the latest SOE ciphers that twisted words into mathematical riddles. The antenna, disguised as a clothesline outside, snaked up to the chimney, feeding the signal skyward. Static hissed back, then the acknowledgement, London's reply, faint but firm, promising more drops, radios among them, to replace those lost. He powered down, the set cooling with a sigh, and rubbed his eyes. At 28, Hawk's hands were calloused from factory work back home, but now they trembled from the precision of code. Riley stirred below, his American drawl cutting the silence as he joined them for a late breakfast of black bread and ersatz coffee. "Heard the patrol, close call. What's the play today?" Pierre, nursing a cigarette, outlined the sabotage, hit a convoy on the road to Bastogne, using the explosives from the drop. Lars nodded silently, his Norwegian reserve hiding a past scarred by quisling collaborators. Elise mapped it out on a scrap of paper, her finger tracing dirt roads like veins pulsing with German traffic. "We move at dusk. The radio stays here. Hawk, you transmit after. Confirm the hit." The day dragged in tense idleness. Hawk tinkered with the set, calibrating frequencies while listening to the farm's rhythms, chickens clucking, the distant low of cows under guard. Outside, autumn leaves swirled in eddies, painting the fields gold and crimson, a deceptive beauty masking the occupation's grip. Belgian villagers passed warily, eyes downcast, avoiding the farmhouse, lest association doom them all. Hawk watched from a slit in the shutters, spotting a Wehrmacht truck rumbling by, its canvas flap revealing crates stamped with swastikas, supplies for the Eastern Front, ripe for disruption. As evening fell, the team slipped out, shadows merging with the twilight. You feel the chill seep in, the crunch of frost-kissed grass under boots, the metallic click of Sten guns slung low. Pierre led, his local knowledge navigating hedgerows and streams, while Riley hefted the plastic explosive, its putty-like consistency molded into charges. Hawk stayed back, covering with his suppressed pistol the radio too precious to risk on the op. Lars scouted ahead, a ghost in the gloom. The ambush site was a narrow defile where the road dipped into a copse of oaks, their branches like skeletal fingers clawing the sky. They waited, breaths fogging the air as the convoy approached. 3 Opel Blitz trucks, headlights slicing the dusk, escorted by a Kubelwagen with 2 SS men scanning the verges. Engines growled, tires humming on gravel. Pierre signaled, "Now." Riley lobbed the first charge, a satchel that erupted under the lead truck's axle in a bloom of fire and shrapnel. The blast echoed like thunder, flipping the vehicle into a ditch, flames licking the fuel tanks. The second truck swerved, brakes screeching, as Pierre and Lars unleashed a hail of bullets from the tree line, short, controlled bursts cracking the night. SS shouts in German, panicked return fire spitting tracers into the dark. You hear it, the acrid burn of cordite, the screams of wounded men, the desperate rev of the surviving truck trying to flee. Hawk fired twice, dropping a guard who lunged from the Kubelwagen, his body crumpling like a discarded puppet. Chaos reigned, explosions ripping crates of ammunition, secondary blasts painting the road in orange fury. The team melted back, grabbing what they could. Rifles, ammo belts, even a map case from the officer's jeep. By the time reinforcements howled in the distance, they were gone, vanishing into the forest like smoke. Back at the farmhouse by midnight, adrenaline still buzzing, Hawk climbed to the attic. Elise bandaged a graze on Riley's arm, her hands steady as she worked. "Good hit," she said. "That'll slow their push to the front." Hawk fired up the radio, the familiar hum a comfort in the adrenaline crash. Message to London. "Convoy destroyed. 3 vehicles. Casualties high. Request resupply." The key clicked, signal leaping the waves. Acknowledgement came swift, laced with coordinates for another drop, more radios, crystals, batteries. London's persistence was a lifeline, dropping sets like manna despite the risks. But in Brussels, the Abwehr's villa buzzed with renewed fury. Oberleutnant Becker paced the operations room, the air thick with tobacco haze and the clatter of teletype machines. His team had triangulated the burst, stronger this time, pinpointing a sector around La Roche. "It's the same operator," Fritz reported, adjusting his glasses as he plotted the fix on a grid map. Bearings from 3 stations converged, 15 kilometers west of the last intercept. Becker's scar twitched, a souvenir from Stalingrad, where he'd learned the cost of underestimating shadows. The collectors had scored big lately, 2 sets from a crashed Lysander near Namur, another from a betrayed cell in Liège. Each radio dissected in Berlin labs, revealing frequencies, tube types, even operator habits. "They dropped them like confetti," Becker growled to his superior, a paunchy major sipping schnapps. "London thinks quantity overwhelms us. But we hoard every fragment. Patterns emerge. Drop zones cluster here in the Ardennes heart." He dispatched a team at dawn, a dozen men in unmarked vans, radio vans trailing with Yagi antennas probing the air. Patrols intensified, sweeping fields for parachutes. Villagers questioned under duress. One farmer cracked, whispering of a widow's farm with strangers. Becker's eyes narrowed. "Raids begin tonight. Collect everything. Sets, codes, the operators if they're breathing." Miles away, as Hawk stowed the radio under the boards, a chill unrelated to the night air prickled his skin. The sabotage had bought time, but the hunters were circling tighter. London's drops continued, radios raining down to arm the resistance, yet the Abwehr's grasp lengthened, one intercepted signal at a time. In the attic's gloom, the war's invisible front lines sharpened, where a single hum could summon salvation or slaughter. November 1943, the frost-rimed fields outside La Roche, Belgium, where the first snowflakes whispered down like omens from a leaden sky. Hawk huddled in the attic's chill embrace, the oil lamp's flame guttering against drafts that seeped through the rafters like icy fingers. The radio lay dormant beneath the floorboards, its components wrapped in oiled rags to ward off the damp, but Hawk could almost hear its phantom hum in the silence. Days had blurred since the convoy ambush, each one a taut wire stretched between transmissions and the ever-present dread of discovery. Elise's farmhouse had become a fortress of whispers, the team moving like shadows during daylight, their sabotage strikes etching small victories into the occupation's hide. You feel the isolation deepening now, the way the wind moans through the pines, carrying echoes of distant artillery from the Siegfried line. Riley paced the narrow space below, his boots soft on the packed earth, muttering about the cold that clawed deeper than any German bullet. "London's dropping again tonight," he said, voice low as he checked his Stengun's magazine. Coordinates came in last burst, same sector but shifted east to throw off the hounds. Pierre nodded from his perch by the window, peering through a crack in the shutters at the white-draped landscape. "Good. We lost a crystal set to moisture last week. Can't transmit blind." Lars, ever the silent sentinel, sharpened his knife on a whetstone, the rhythmic scrape a counterpoint to the settling snow. Elise entered from the kitchen, her apron dusted with flour from baking false-bottomed loaves to hide microfilm. "Patrols doubled since your hit. Abwehr vans prowling the roads. Black ones, no markings. They question everyone, offer rewards for found equipment." Hawk descended the ladder, rubbing warmth into his hands. The briefing from London had been terse. More radios en route, along with arms for a larger cell in the next valley. The SOE's factories churned them out, Eureka sets with homing beacons, Type 3s tuned to evade direction finders. But each drop was a gamble, parachutes blooming like accusations in the night sky. "We meet the reception committee at the old mill, 2 miles out," Hawke said, tracing the route on a crumpled map. "I'll handle the radio recovery. Rest of you secure the perimeter." Dusk fell early. The sun, a brief smear on the horizon before the world turned to monochrome. The team slipped out under cover of the blizzard's veil, boots crunching through fresh powder that muffled their steps but chilled to the marrow. You imagine the bite. Wind whipping flakes into your face, stinging like needles. The forest a labyrinth of white-shrouded trunks. Pierre led, his local instincts guiding them along deer paths that skirted the main roads, where German checkpoints loomed like iron gates. The mill squatted by a frozen stream, its wheels stilled for years, waterlogged timbers creaking under the snow's weight. 3 resistance fighters waited, rough men from the village, faces obscured by balaclavas, torches dimmed to red filters. "The sky's clear enough," one grunted, a burly farmer named Jacques. "Sterling due in 20, flares ready." They waited, breaths clouding the air, ears straining for the drone above the gale. Minutes stretched, tension coiling like a spring. Then a low thrum, growing to a roar, as the bomber sliced through the clouds, its silhouette a black cruciform against the stars. The dispatcher kicked out the first container, a cylindrical shadow tumbling earthward, followed by chutes billowing with supplies. But the wind played tricks, gusts shoving the loads off course, one canister crashing into the tree line with a distant thud. "Scatter!" Jacques hissed as the team fanned out. Hawke sprinted toward the errant drop, snow flying up in plumes, his flashlight beam cutting the whiteout. He found it half buried in a drift. The radio set intact, its case dented but sealed, antenna coiled like a serpent. As he hefted it, a second chute snagged nearby, this one carrying rifles and grenades. Success, but incomplete. 2 packages had veered wide, into open fields patrolled by the enemy. Back at the mill, they bundled the haul into burlap sacks, the radio's weight a reassuring anchor on Hawke's shoulder. Riley slung a crate of Bren magazines, grinning through frost-laced whiskers. "London's generous tonight, enough juice to light up the whole damn Ardennes." But as they retraced their steps, a new sound pierced the storm. Engines low and predatory, headlights sweeping the valley like searchlights. Abwehr. The black vans crested a ridge, tires chains rattling on the iced road. Becker's team had anticipated this. Intercepts from a fixed station in Luxembourg had sniffed the drop's timing, bearings locking on the mill's sector. In the lead van, Oberleutnant Becker gripped the dashboard, his breath fogging the windshield. "Push through the snow," he barked to the driver, a stocky sergeant named Heinz. "The signal spiked here. Fresh transmissions mean fresh drops." Fritz, in the trailing radio truck, adjusted his receiver, the dials glowing green in the cab's gloom. Snow lashed the windows, but the Yagi array on the roof probed relentlessly. "Strong residual. They've got at least 1 set active, and parachutes down in this mess, they'll leave trails." The vans fanned out, men spilling into the night with torches and MP40s, boots sinking into drifts as they quartered the ground. One patrol stumbled on the wide-veered container first, a thudding impact against a fence post, spilling its guts, medical supplies, chocolate bars, and crucially, a backup radio shattered but salvageable. "Collector finds!" a soldier yelled, waving the twisted antenna like a trophy. Becker arrived, kneeling in the snow, gloved hands sifting the wreckage. Tubes cracked, but the crystal oscillator intact, enough to analyze, to map London's frequency shifts. "Mark it," he ordered, voice cutting the wind. "And fan east. The main drop's close." His scar itched under the cold, a reminder of winters past, but this hunt was personal. The Resistance's web frayed with each piece they claimed. Dissected sets revealed operator codes, drop patterns. Berlin demanded more. The Führer's inner circle obsessed with crushing the shadows before the Allied invasion loomed. Miles away, the team reached the farmhouse undetected, hearts pounding from the close call. Elise bolted the door, her face ashen as she helped unload. Heard the engines? They found something, smoke rising from the fields at dawn. Hawk powered the new radio in the attic, its hum a defiant pulse against the storm. Test transmission, Sparrowhawk secure, drop partial, assets acquired. The signal leaped out, acknowledgement flickering back amid static. But as he encoded the details, losses minimal, sabotage planned for a fuel depot near Sedan, a bearing locked in Fritz's truck. Fix confirmed, the corporal radioed Becker. La Roche sector, strong operator. Becker's lips curled in a grim smile. Raid at first light, full sweep, collect every radio, every wire. The vans idled, headlights off, waiting for the snow to ease. In the attic, Hawk stowed the set, the chill deepening as distant shouts echoed faintly through the night. London's drops persisted, seeding the Resistance with lifelines, but the Abwehr's collectors hungered, their net drawing inexorably tight. One more transmission, one misplaced shoot, and the shadows might shatter. December 1943. The pre-dawn hush over La Roche. Belgium, where the snow lay heavy and unbroken, muffling the world in a deceptive blanket of peace. Hawk lay motionless in the attic's loft, his breath shallow and controlled, ears attuned to the creak of timbers settling under the frost. The new radio was buried deep beneath a false panel in the floor, its antenna line coiled like a sleeping viper, but the air felt charged, as if the very walls anticipated violence. Below, the farmhouse stirred faintly, Elise moving like a spectre in the kitchen, brewing weak tea from scavenged leaves, while Riley and the others snatched fitful sleep on their pallets. The raid's threat hung unspoken, a shadow cast by the engines they'd heard the night before, now silent but no less ominous. You sense it in the stillness, that prickling at the nape of your neck, the way the cold seeps into your bones and sharpens every sense. Lars had scouted at midnight, returning with news of tire tracks scarring the snow a mile out. Abwehr vans idling in the woods, their crews huddled against the gale. "They wait for light," he'd whispered, his Norwegian accent clipped with urgency. "Becker's men, the collectors." Pierre had cursed softly, loading his Sten gun with practiced hands, while Riley checked the escape chute one last time, grease-slicked and ready for a desperate slide. Hawk's mind raced through contingencies. The drop had yielded 2 radios, one for the attic, the spare stowed in a hollowed-out beam for Elise's secondary cell. London's messages had poured in since. Coordinates for a rail cut near Arlen, warnings of Gestapo sweeps in the south, but each transmission painted a target on their backs. The signals burst like a flare in the night. He'd encoded the last one hours ago, tapping out sabotage reports with fingers numb from the chill, the Morse key's rhythm a heartbeat in the gloom. First light filtered through the shutters, grey and unforgiving, turning the snowfields into a glaring expanse. Elise climbed the ladder, her face gaunt in the half-dark. Boots on the road, 3 vans coming slow. Her voice was steady, but her eyes betrayed the toll. Another winter under the boot, another risk to her home. Hawk nodded, slinging a rucksack with essentials, cipher pads, pistol, a single grenade. "We hold the attic. By time for the others to scatter." The growl of engines swelled, tires crunching ice as the convoy halted outside the farmhouse gate. Shouts in German barked orders, doors slamming like judgments. Becker stepped out first, his greatcoat dusted with snow, collar turned up against the wind. Flanked by a squad of 10, MP40s at the ready, Fritz trailing with a portable direction finder, He scanned the property with those unblinking eyes. The scar on his cheek stood white against ruddy skin, a map of old wounds. "Surround it," he commanded, voice carrying clear over the frost. "No one in or out. If they resist, take them alive. The radios are the prize." Inside, chaos ignited. A fist pounded the door, splintering wood. "Open! Abwehr!" Riley fired first. A burst from the stairs, shattering the window glass, bullets whining into the yard. Return fire erupted, lead chewing the frame, forcing the team back. Pierre lobbed the grenade through a gap, the blast blooming in a roar of snow and shrapnel, downing 2 Germans in a spray of crimson. You hear the concussion rattle your teeth, the acrid bite of powder, the screams piercing the storm. Hawk hauled the radio from its hiding spot, smashing the tubes with his boot, better destroyed than captured. Sparks flew, the set's innards a tangle of ruined wire as he kicked the remains into the chute. "Go!" he yelled to Lars, who vanished down the slide in a whoosh of oiled fabric, landing in the pigsty muck below. Elise followed, her skirts hiked, emerging coated in filth, but free. Riley and Pierre covered the rear, Stenchatter stitching the air as they retreated through a rear window into the barn. Becker's men breached the door, boots thumping across the threshold, bayonets fixed. Fritz swept the rooms with his detector, dials flickering faintly over residual signals. "Attic! Strong echo here!" Up the ladder they swarmed, flashlights piercing the gloom, but found only the oil lamp overturned, its flame guttering out in a pool of wax. Becker knelt by the chute's mouth, gloved hand tracing the grease. They slid, searched the outbuildings, collect any fragments. Outside, the team regrouped in the tree line, breaths ragged, snow caking their clothes. Hawk clutched the rucksack. The destroyed radio's weight, a bitter reminder. Farmhouse lost. Head for the river crossing. Jacques has a boat. They melted into the white woods, footsteps erased by falling flakes, but not before Pierre twisted an ankle in a root-hidden drift, slowing them. Riley supported him, cursing the cold that numbed his fingers on the trigger. The Abwehr ransacked the site with methodical fury. Becker's collectors sifted the attic, unearthing the spare radio from its beam, intact, its case unmarked. "Jackpot!" Fritz breathed, cradling it like contraband gold. Shattered remnants from the main set littered the chute, tubes and coils pieced together on the spot. Soldiers combed the yard, finding buried chutes from prior drops, antenna wires snagged in hedges. Even the safe-house's cipher scraps, half-burned in the hearth, were bagged for Berlin's codebreakers. Becker watched, satisfaction etching his features. 2 sets in one sweep, dissect them, frequencies match the Ardennes pattern. London's dropping blind, we see the trail. By midday, the team reached the Meuse's icy banks, Jacques waiting with oars muffled in rags. The boat cut through slushy water, ferrying them east to a partisan outpost in the hills. Hawk's hands shook as he recounted the raid to the cell leader, a grizzled maquisard named Theo. "Abwehr got the farm. Radio's gone." Theo's face hardened, passing a flask of schnapps that burned like fire down Hawk's throat. "London will send more, they always do. But Becker's collectors, they hoard like dragons. Last month they took 5 sets from a crash near Dinant, patterns in the drops, they're mapping us." Word spread through the network. Elise vanished into the woods, her cell splintered but unbroken. Riley nursed Pierre's ankle with sulfur powder from the last drop, while Lars scouted for a new hide, a derelict chapel 2 valleys over. Hawk mourned the loss silently, the radio's destruction a gut punch. Yet by nightfall, a runner arrived with a crystal set, smuggled from a neighboring farm, powered by scavenged batteries. It was crude, range limited, but enough for a burst to London. Sparrowhawk relocated, site compromised, request emergency drop, radio's priority. In Brussels, Becker's villa thrummed with activity. The captured sets lay on lab tables, technicians prying open casings under harsh bulbs, tubes tested, crystals etched for serial numbers, each piece a thread in the web. "Frequency hopper confirmed," an engineer reported, peering through a loop. "But the ciphers evolve. We need more operators to break them." Becker nodded, plotting the next sweep on his map. Pins clustering around La Roche like wounds. The Allies' shadow loomed larger, invasion whispers from the west, but crushing the Resistance's voice came first. "Double the vans. Every drop, every signal. We collect it all." As the team hunkered in the chapel's crypt, the wind howling through cracked stone, Hawk tuned the crystal set by candlelight. Static crackled. Then London's voice, faint Morse promising a drop at midnight, shifted north to evade the net. Radios again, lifelines from the sky. But the Abwehr's hunger grew, their trove of intercepted sets revealing secrets, drop by drop. In the crypt's chill, Hawk tapped his key, the dots and dashes a defiant rhythm. The war's silent war raged on, where one hum could ignite rebellion or summon the reapers. Snow fell thicker outside, burying tracks, but the hunter's eyes pierced deeper, one collected radio at a time. January 1944. The shadowed crypt beneath the derelict chapel in the hills east of La Roche, Belgium, where the air hung thick with the musty scent of ancient stone and damp earth, pierced only by the faint drip of melting snow from cracks overhead. Hawk knelt on the flagstone floor, the crystal set's makeshift table, a plank balanced on two crates scavenged from the ruins above. Candlelight danced across the dials, casting elongated shadows that twisted like listening ears on the walls. The set was a patchwork beast. Valves jury-rigged from a farmer's radio, antenna strung through a fissure to the bell tower, its wire humming faintly in the draught. His fingers, or from the cold, hovered over the Morse key, the last transmission's echo still buzzing in his ears. London's promise of a midnight drop, radios to rebuild what Becker's collectors had torn away. You feel the confinement pressing in now, the crypt's low ceiling brushing your head if you stand too straight, the weight of centuries-old vaults sealing you from the world above. Riley slumped against a pillar, whittling a stick with his knife to steady his nerves, while Pierre's bandaged ankle throbbed visibly under the dim light, forcing him to prop it on a burlap sack. Lars paced the perimeter, his boots silent on the mossy stones, eyes flicking to the ladder leading to the chapel's nave. Elise had joined them days ago, slipping through the lines with a satchel of bread and forged papers, her widow's resolve unbroken, despite the farmhouse's ashes. "The network whispers," she said earlier, voice a low rasp. "Becker's men parade their haul in Brussels, radios on display like trophies, but London drops twice as many now, flooding the fields to drown their net." Hawk tapped the key experimentally. The crystal sets range a fragile thread across the channel, short bursts only, to evade the Abwehr's direction finders. Static whispered back, then the coded reply. Drop confirmed. Sterling inbound at 0100 hours. New coordinates in the next valley to shake pursuers. He encoded the acknowledgement, dots and dashes leaping into the ether, the set's hum of fragile defiance in the stone tomb. "Power down, wrap it quick." The battery's acid tang sharp in his nostrils as he stowed it in a niche behind loose bricks. "We move in an hour," he said, voice echoing softly. "Theo's maquisards will signal the DZ. 2 radios priority. Can't operate blind." The team ascended the ladder as midnight tolled faintly from a distant village clock, muffled by the snowfall that blanketed the hills in fresh white. Outside, the world was a monochrome dreamscape. Pines bowed under powder, the air crisp and biting like a blade against exposed skin. You imagine the crunch underfoot, each step a potential betrayer in the silence, the cold, numbing toes through wool socks and leather. Jacques met them at the tree line, his breath fogging as he handed out torches wrapped in red cloth. "Storm's easing. Sky clear for the bird, but patrols, Abwehr, checkpoints on the river road sniffing for signals. They trekked south, a chain of shadows weaving through gullies where the snow hid frozen streams, the Muse's distant murmur a guiding thread. Pierre leaned on Riley, gritting teeth against the pain, while Lars scouted ahead, vanishing into flurries like a wraith. Elise brought up the rear, her pistol tucked in her coat, eyes scanning the ridgelines for glints of steel. The drop zone was a clearing by an abandoned quarry, its sheer walls a natural amphitheater to muffle flares. Theo's men arrived first, 6 hardened partisans in patched greatcoats, faces blackened with soot, Steen guns slung low. "Flares set," Theo grunted, a scar across his brow from a Gestapo whip. "London's pushing hard. Heard they lost a plane last week over the Somme. Whole load of sets to the drink. But they keep coming." The wait stretched, wind whispering through the quarry's moor, carrying the faint scent of pine sap and gun oil. Tension coiled in your gut, the stars wheeling overhead like indifferent witnesses. Then the drone, low at first, building to a thunderous pulse as the Sterling breached the clouds, its 4 engines a symphony of liberation. The dispatcher's signal, a single flare arced up, painting the snow crimson, guiding the bomber's path. Containers tumbled, cylindrical shadows silhouetted against the moon. Shoots blooming like ghostly flowers, drifting on the breeze. "Grab 'em!" Theo bellowed as the first thudded down, snow erupting in a plume. The team swarmed, hands clawing through drifts to unclip harnesses. Hawk seized the radio container, its weight solid and reassuring. The Type 3 Mark II gleaming under frost like buried treasure. Rifles, explosives, medical kits followed, bundled into sacks with frantic efficiency. But the wind betrayed them again. One chute snagged on a cliff edge, tearing free to spill its load down the slope. A secondary radio case cracking open on rocks, components scattering like shattered bones. "Leave it! Move!" Lars hissed, spotting headlights flickering on the far ridge. Abwehr. Becker's intelligence had pierced the shift. A tip from a coerced villager, or perhaps a lucky intercept from the crystal set's faint pulse. In the lead van, Becker hunched over the dashboard, the cab warmed by a stuttering heater, maps crinkling under his gloved hands. Snow lashed the windshield wipers, but his focus was iron. Quarry sector, residual from their burst. The collectors take no prisoners tonight. Fritz, beside him, monitored the portable receiver, dials spiking green. "Drop in progress, strong signals, multiple sets down." The vans surged forward, chains rattling over iced paths, spilling men into the night with orders barked in clipped German. Torches swept the snow, boots pounding as they converged on the quarry's rim. Gunfire cracked first, a partisan's sten chattering from the shadows, bullets ricocheting off stone. Return fire roared, MP-40 bursts stitching the air, forcing the team to dive behind crates. You hear the zip of lead, the wet smack of impacts in flesh, the acrid bloom of muzzle flash cutting the dark. Riley returned fire, dropping a German silhouette mid-stride, while Theo's men lobbed grenades that erupted in geysers of snow and screams. Hawk slung the radio over his shoulder, the strap biting into his coat as he scrambled up the quarry wall, fingers scrabbling for purchase on icy ledges. Elise covered him, her pistol barking twice, one shot finding a mark in a torchbearer's chest. Pierre and Lars hauled the other loads, breaths ragged, the slope a treacherous slide of powder and shale. A bullet grazed Hawk's boot, sparking stone, but they crested the rim, vanishing into the pines as the Abwehr closed the noose. Below, Becker's men secured the field. Fritz's team zeroed in on the spilled radio, tubes intact, antenna bent but functional, crystals winking in the torchlight. "Another one," a soldier reported, bagging the pieces with reverence. Patrols fanned out, uncovering a discarded chute tangled in thorns. its silk a white flag of failure. Becker knelt by the wreckage, sifting shards, his breath steady despite the skirmish's echoes fading. 2 partisans down, but the haul, 1 full set from the cliff, fragments yielding frequency data. "Bag it all," he said, voice calm as the falling snow. "Berlin will dissect this. Patterns in the chutes, the loads. London's flooding us, but we dam the stream." By dawn, the team holed up in a partisan cave. The radio safe, but the cost tallied. Jacques wounded, leg shattered by shrapnel, Theo's cell bloodied. Hawk powered the set by firelight, the hum a balm amid groans and the coppery scent of bandages. Message to London. Drop secured partial. Casualties. Abwehr engaged. Collectors active. The key clicked, signal pulsing out. Acknowledgement faint through interference. More drops promised. Radios to replace the lost. The SOE's resolve unyielding. In Brussels, Becker's operations room pulsed with victory. The new acquisitions joined the trove. Shelves lined with gutted sets, technicians probing circuits under lamps that buzzed like angry wasps. Hopper variant, an expert noted, tracing wires. But the crystals match prior hauls, Ardennes batch. They're clustering drops here, prepping for something big. Becker pinned the quarry on his map, the cluster tightening like a noose. Whispers of Allied landings filtered from the west, but his mandate was clear. Silence the voices first, triple the sweeps. Every flake hides a chute. We collect until the shadows scream. Deep in the cave, as the team licked wounds and planned the next strike, a fuel convoy near Luxembourg, Hawk stared at the radio's glow. London's persistence rained lifelines from the sky, but Becker's hoard grew, each piece a step closer to unraveling the web. The winter deepened, snow burying secrets, yet the hunt intensified, one intercepted hum at a time. The resistance flickered, defiant, but the collector's grasp clawed nearer, threatening to snuff the spark before spring's thunder broke. February 1944. The jagged maw of a partisan cave in the forested hills southeast of La Roche, Belgium, where the air was thick with the tang of pine resin, wood smoke, and the faint, metallic bite of blood-soaked bandages. Hawk hunched over the radio in the cave's flickering torchlight, the set's valves glowing like embers in a dying fire. The Type 3 Mark II, salvaged from the quarry drop, hummed softly under his touch, its antenna snaking through a crevice to the outside world, where winter's grip still strangled the Ardennes. Snowmelt dripped from the ceiling in erratic rhythms, pooling on the uneven stone floor and mirroring the unsteady pulse of the resistance. Jacques groaned from his pallet, his shattered legs splintered with branches and rags, while Theo's maquisards murmured plans around a low fire, their faces etched with the hollows of hunger and endless vigilance. You feel the damp chill seeping through your clothes now, the cave walls pressing close like the jaws of a trap, every echo amplified into suspicion. Elise stirred a pot of thin stew over the flames, her movements precise despite the shadows under her eyes that had seen too many farms burn. Riley sharpened his knife on a whetstone, the scrape a steady counterpoint to the radio's static, while Pierre tested his weight on the healing ankle, wincing but determined. Lars stood guard at the entrance, his silhouette framed against the starry void, rifle cradled like a talisman. The last transmission had been a lifeline. London's coordinates for a massive resupply, the largest yet, dozens of containers, radios to arm splintered cells across the borderlands. "They're prepping for the storm," Theo had said, passing the decoded slip. "Invasion whispers grow louder. We cut the veins before the Allies strike." Hawk had tapped it out hours ago, the Morse key's rhythm, a Morse code of hope amid the interference, Abwehr jammers buzzing like hornets from fixed stations in Luxembourg. Acknowledgement came back, faint but insistent. Sterling flight inbound at 200, shifted north to a meadow by the Orthe River, beacons from 3 cells to guide it home. Risky. Hawk muttered, powering down the set and wrapping it in oilskin. The cave's depths hid 3 spares now, crystals tucked in hollows, but each hum drew the hunters closer. Becker's sweeps had intensified, black vans prowling like wolves, their Yagi antennas sniffing the air for any whisper. Word from runners spoke of villages razed, operators vanished into Gestapo cellars, radios paraded in Brussels as scalps. Yet London persisted, factories in the Midlands churning sets by the crate, parachutes stitched for the shadows. Midnight came with a howl of wind through the pines, the team slipping out under the moon's pale sickle. You sense the night's embrace, cold air knifing your lungs, snow crusting under boots as you trek the ridgelines. The river's rush, a distant roar below. Theo led a dozen now, merged cells swelling their ranks, Belgians, French exiles, even a downed RAF pilot with a Cockney slur and a grudge. Elise carried the signal torch, its red filter a bloody eye in the gloom, while Hawk shouldered a Bren gun, the radio left behind under Lars's watch. The meadow stretched like a white scar along the Orthes Bend, hedgerows black against the snow, the water churning black and foamy under ice floes. Flares arced from hidden spots, 3 pulses the Resistance's triad, guiding the bomber through the overcast. The Sterling's drone built like thunder, engines straining against the load, a behemoth blotting the stars as it circled low. Containers rained down in a cascade, 20, 30 shadows tumbling, chutes snapping open in billows of silk, thudding into drifts with muffled impacts. Rifles, explosives, medical crates, and radios, 5 marked cases thudding heavy, their promise a spark in the frozen dark. Chaos of recovery, hands digging furiously, backs straining under weights. Laughter barking sharp against the tension as Theo's men hauled the bounty. Hawk claimed a radio. Its case frost-rhymed but sealed, the weight a vow of continuity. Enough to link the whole sector, he breathed, clipping it secure. But triumph soured fast. Headlights pierced the tree line, engines growling as Abwehr vans erupted from a side road, tires churning snow into slush. Becker had anticipated a villager's slip or Fritz's triangulation from the cave's faint burst, locking the fix like a vice. "Ambush!" Riley yelled, Sten gun chattering as the first van slewed into the meadow, bullets sparking off its grill. MP40s answered, tracers arcing like fireflies, mowing down 2 maquisards in sprays of red mist. You hear the bedlam. Engines revving, shouts in German clashing with French curses, the wet rip of rounds into flesh. Grenades blooming in orange fury that lit the snow like hellfire. Theo lobbed a charge under a radio truck, the blast flipping it into the river with a screech of tearing metal, flames hissing on the water. Elise fired her pistol point blank, dropping a soldier lunging from the wreckage, her face a mask of grim resolve. Becker leaped from the second van, pistol drawn, his greatcoat flapping as he directed the fray. "The sets! Secure the sets!" he roared over the din, scar livid in the firelight. Fritz's team zeroed in, direction finder beeping amid the smoke, homing on the scattered cases. Collectors swarmed, bayonets flashing as they claimed 2 radios intact. A third shattered, but its tubes bagged. Bullets whined past Hawk's ear as he dragged his load toward the trees, Riley covering with bursts that felled a pair of pursuers. Pierre stumbled, ankle buckling, but Lars hauled him up, the Norwegian's knife slashing a throat in close quarters. The team broke for the riverbank, wading into the icy torrent, crates buoyed on improvised rafts of chute silk. Gunfire stitched the water, splashing cold sprays, but the current swept them downstream, bullets losing bite in the churn. 3 maquisards fell, bodies floating limp, but the haul endured. 3 radios safe, explosives dripping but viable. Becker's men held the meadow, sifting wreckage under his watchful eye. Chutes riddled with holes, a 4th radio's antenna snapped like a broken spine, crystals glinting in torch beams. 4 out of 5, Fritz reported, breathless, as medics bandaged the wounded. Becker nodded, lips thin, the collection a partial victory. Dissect them on sight. Frequencies, serials, the patterns clear. Ardennes hub, invasion prep, alert Berlin, we choke it here. By false dawn, the survivors regrouped in a thicket downstream, soaked and shivering, the radios huddled like orphaned children. Hawk powered one up on a bed of pine needles, the hum defiant against the river's rush. Message burst to London. Drop contested, 3 sets secured, heavy losses, collectors claim 4, evade sector. Static crackled, then acknowledgement. More flights en route, drops doubled, the SOE's factories unbowed. Theo tallied the dead, his voice rough. They hoard our voices, but we scream louder. Ubin Brussels, Becker's villa overflowed with the night's trove. Technicians swarmed the captured radios under stark lights, prying casings to reveal innards, hoppers tuned to new bands, ciphers etched in miniature. Ardennes cluster peaks, an analyst charted, pins swarming the map like locusts. Becker paced, pipe smoke curling, the weight of the Eastern Front's ghosts mingling with this shadow war. London floods the field, but we dam every stream. One more sweep, and the web unravels before their invasion breaks. Deep in the thicket, as the team nursed wounds and plotted the next cut, a bridge over the Semois, Hawk gazed at the radio's glow. Snow flurried anew, burying the meadow's scars, but the hunt's echo lingered. London kept dropping, radios seeding rebellion like relentless rain, while the Abwehr collected every fallen piece, their hoard a map to silence. The winter waned, spring's thaw whispering of greater storms, but in the Ardennes' heart, the invisible front burned on, one hum, one shoot, one unyielding grasp at a time. The resistance endured, voices multiplying in the dark, waiting for the thunder that would shatter the collector's net forever.